Hi everyone, Stepan here. It's Wednesday, so we are going to continue the series on Capablanca. This is another game from his 1901 match series. He was 13 years old at the time, and he played a couple of opponents. Corzo was one of them, who was the strongest player in Cuba. They went on to play a match later on. But among others were Gavilan. I'm not sure what A stands for. What I did manage to find is that he has 16 games in the database. The first one is from 1901, it's this one, and then the last one was in 1951. So he was either a very strong, or he was either a chess player for a long time, or that's a different guy. I'm not sure, I'm sorry about that, I just couldn't find more information. So Capablanca was 13, and this game was very nice. Now, from a theoretical and tactical perspective, I think it's going to be very instructive. Okay, so his opponent plays e4, we have e5, knight f3, knight c6, and now his opponent plays the Scotch. Capablanca takes, we have bishop c4, the Scotch Gambit, and now the main move is knight f6, going for the Scotch Gambit, which is a variation in which white gives up the bishop pair, but has a lead in development, a safer king, and a better pawn structure, because black ends up with double c-pawns. So the variation goes e5, e5, d5, bishop b5, knight e4, knight takes d4, bishop to d7, bishop takes, pawn takes, and after castles, bishop c5. It's supposed to be equal, but after f3, knight g5, f4, knight e4, white stands a bit better in the attack with a safer king and obviously better pawn structure. Instead of that, Capablanca plays the Haxo Gambit with bishop to c5. Now, the main line allows black to take the pawn straight away, and white plays c3. Now, taking on c3 is very problematic. Now, in all Scotch, Italian, some Spanish lines, whenever the bishop gets to this diagonal, so mostly Italian and Scotch, you have to be aware of f7. And since black played bishop c5 instead of knight f6, this point could be quite vulnerable. And obviously, he doesn't have d5 now. It's not as strong because the knight is not on f6. So after bishop c5, if white continues with c3, this pawn really shouldn't be taken if you don't know what you're doing. So from a theoretical perspective, for all e5 players, just try to memorize this. If you don't be tempted to take the pawn, if you are, then learn the following line. So bishop takes on f7, obviously, and after king takes f7, then queen d5 check, and black is going to regain his piece. After king f8, queen takes c5 check. Queen e7, queen takes, knight takes c3. It's supposed to be equal, but black gave up his castling rights. He doesn't have the bishop pair anymore. And even if you know this forcing line, I don't think it's as good. So after c3, probably the best move is knight f6, and after c takes d4, you play bishop b4 check, and now this transposes to the Greco Gambit in the Italian, so that should already be known territory. Now, instead of that, after bishop c5, his opponent didn't play c3, he played castles. And now, after castles, d6 leads to the Cochrane-Anderson in the Scotch Gambit, so we remain in the Scotch Gambit after d6, which is the main move. And after c3, you continue with bishop g4, and this again is a very sharp line after queen b3, bishop takes f3, bishop takes f7, king f8, leads to complete chaos. So probably Capablanca didn't know this, probably he wasn't avoiding this, but still he didn't play it. He played knight g to e7. Of course, instead of knight g to e7, you could play knight f6, which transposes to the Italian, to the Max Lange attack in the two knights. So again, very theoretically heavy. So let's get to the game. Knight g to e7. c3 played. Now, of course, it's not as dangerous, because you could castle on the next move, so d takes c3. Okay, still, you could continue with bishop takes f7, but it wouldn't be as strong because the knight has already been developed. So knight takes c3 played, Capablanca castles, and now the first weird move. Again, I'm going to run an engine analysis at the end of the video to see whether I went wrong. I'm going to share my analysis during the video. So this is what I think was the first mistake. Bishop g5 is not really a good place for the bishop. That being said, f4 or e3 are not ideal either. But bishop g5 just invites a tempo with either h6 or what Capablanca played, king h8, f6. So I think h6, bishop h4, and d6 would be the principal way to play. Instead, king h8, which is also really good, a3. A3 is a second move that sort of earns a question mark. I think, of course, it prepares b4, b5, but you're not quick enough to do that because I play f6 straight away. Now, keeping the bishop on the same diagonal probably doesn't make too much sense, because if your bishop gets to g3, I will play d6 anyway, and this bishop will really not have a bright future. Gavilan did play bishop h4. I think exchanging and trying to open up the a file would be okay as well, so bishop e3 takes, f takes. I don't see a big problem with these double pawns, but maybe it looks ugly. Okay, knight g6 played, which attacks the bishop, which is okay. Bishop g3, d6, h3. Making some room for the bishop. Other than that, I think it's a weakening move, because now the bishop is hanging. I have a bishop on c5, so technically h3 is a weak move because it undefends a piece. Now white has two undefended pieces, and whenever you try to analyze a position, I think the first thing you should look at tactically are the undefended pieces. So for the moment, black has none, white has two, which is worse than none. Okay, and now knight c to e5 attacks the knight, attacks the bishop, attacks the undefended bishop, so the bishop retreats to b3. Again, bishop a2 seems more sensible because you played a3, so you may play b4 later on. Okay, knight takes f3, queen takes f3, and now Capablanca played an imprecise move. I analyzed this position, and I think I found a win for black. We're going to check with an engine, but I think there's a move here that just wins. I just couldn't find a defense. So try to pause the video, find an absolutely crushing move for black. Okay, so I think the correct continuation is f5. I just don't see a good defense. Obviously your queen is attacked after I take the pawn. Even worse, I'm going to play f4. And if I play f4, I'm completely destroying your position, completely killing this bishop, because h4 is of course defended, and I could still use the e5 square for my knight later on. So for example, if white does nothing, well, let's say he plays e5, which doesn't seem to be a good move, but it's one of the three options. After e5, you continue with f4, and after bishop to h2, you take on e5, of course chasing the queen away. Something like queen h5 could be played, and now you can continue with rook f5 or with f3. Both seem very strong. Maybe rook f5, queen d1, and now f3. E5 seems to lose straight away. If you take the pawn, then I take with the bishop, and it's not easy to move your queen away. You could move it to d1, but I could, for example, queen d1, queen g5. First of all, I'm threatening to take the bishop. What do you do? Bishop h2. I play knight f4 or knight h4. So for example, bishop h2, knight h4. I don't know. If you play g3, I'm not sure I'm sacking my knight immediately with knight f3, queen f3, bishop h3. Maybe this is just premature. But still, I think the compensation I get for locking in this piece, I think should be enough. So after f5, I don't think ef5 works. And if you do nothing, if you play, for example, rook a to d1, then I don't take the pawn. I simply continue with f4, and I have the same idea here, just knight h4, and you move your queen, I play f3. So I think f5 just wins straight away. All options seem bad. Instead, Capablanca played knight e5. Which attacks the queen, gives white the option to give up this bishop, which I think would be a good idea. So take, I'm guessing f takes, and now something like queen e2. And all of a sudden your bishop isn't hanging anymore, you only have one undefended piece, you have problems on f2, but that shouldn't be terminal. You have a great bishop on b3, the knight can use the d5 square, black doesn't really want to play c6 because then d6 would be weak. So I think from a human perspective this would have been a good idea. Instead, after knight e5, queen e2 was played, and now I would say the second imprecise move from Capablanca, but understandable. Now he plays queen e8. Queen e8 prepares queen g6, getting the queen into the attack, attacking the undefended bishop. Maybe it was too slow. I think again just f5, even though the queen has moved, f5 seems to be strong. So takes, bishop takes. You could win a pawn, but you really shouldn't win a pawn. So here's my analysis of bishop takes, e5, so takes, takes, queen takes. And now I could simply continue with bishop to d4, and once you move your queen, let's say to g3, I play bishop to d3. And now if you take my bishop, I check and win your queen. If you move your rook away, then I check and win your queen. So f5 again seems very strong here. I don't think white should be taking this pawn. So if white doesn't take the pawn, again, if he plays something random, then again we have the same variation. Fine, I don't have knight h4 in this position, but your bishop still doesn't have h4, so after bishop h2 I still play f3. But queen e8 played, which isn't bad. It's just, I think f5 was kind of a chance to seize the moment and crush white. Knight d5 attacks c7. Queen g6 ignores that. You could take on c7, but then I win your bishop. So if knight c7, queen takes g3. King h1, now threatening to take on c7. And again, that's ignored. Why? Because now we have tactical opportunities on h3. So for example, if you play knight takes c7, then I believe this just loses straight away. If you take my rook, I play bishop g4, winning. And if you take my bishop, I take, you go to g1 and I take your bishop for free. Again, this pawn is pinned, so you'd have to go back. I would check you, you go here, and now I could save my rook. I could probably just continue with knight g4, threatening mate. So once you chase my knight to, oh, excuse me, this is still pinned. Yeah, this would be mate. So after queen h6, bishop d1 was played. Bishop d1, I don't know. Okay, it tries to defend, undevelops the bishop, but already I would say black is winning or very close to winning. Now here Capablanca played g6, which is a move I don't understand at all. I really don't know what to say about this move. So it undefends f6, makes f6 weaker, so if the rook moves knight f6, it defends h5 and f5, which I don't think is important here. Maybe, I don't know what the point is. Instead of that, I think c6 should have been played, and now the knight probably just has to move back to c3. If it goes to c7, then I move my rook and your knight is trapped. And when the knight goes to c3, I just crush you with bishop g4. And after bishop g4, you have no moves. For example, queen e1, bishop h3, gh3, queen h3 check. Again, your bishop is hanging. Now I could take straight away. I could also play knight d3, which seems okay, attacking the queen and then winning the bishop. And if you play bishop h2, covering your king up, then I could just play knight d3 anyway, and you probably play queen d2, and now I just continue with knight f4, and I'm threatening mate, and you probably resign. So I think c6 was just crushing, chasing the knight away, and then continuing with bishop g4. You could also play bishop g4 straight away, I believe, but this seems safer. And also, yeah, you cannot, because the knight is defending f4, so you need your knight to be able to get the f4 square. But g6 played, and now knight f4, g5, so g6 really wasn't a purposeful move, knight d3, and now bishop takes h3 finally, played, and it's still very much crushing. G takes h3, queen h3 check, king to g1, you win the bishop for free. Tactically, this game is just perfect. King h1, and now you can take the knight with the queen, or you could check first and take the knight with the knight, which is what Capablanca did. King g1, knight takes d3, and now obviously it's a piece up, and the game is over. Queen f3 played, and now maybe an engine shouldn't exchange queens. I have no idea what the engine would say, but I think every human would just play queen takes f3, and yeah, now f5. This is another great tactical move, just exchanges two pieces for the rook, and then later on threatens to win the bishop. So takes, knight takes. Okay, excuse me. So if the knight is taken, then I play f takes e, and if you move your king, I take your bishop. If whatever, I just win, and I'm a whole rook up. So after knight f2, e5 played, and now knight h3 check, saving the knight, king h2. D takes e5. If you take my knight, I play g4, so again winning a piece. Bishop b7 played to try and trick black, but now rook a b8. Still, if you take my knight, I take your bishop. Bishop d5, knight f4, finally saving the knight. And here it's a rook up. It's a rook up and 4 pawns. So an overwhelming material advantage, and in 4 moves. White finally gave up here after bishop f1, rook d2, h2, rook to d1, e3. White gave up. So tactically a perfect game. I think if we turn on the engine now, let me just add the evaluation bar to the right side of the screen. Okay, and we will turn on the engine now, and we will start in the position after queen takes f3, where I've been analyzing f5. So the engine thinks f5 is -1.5. I thought it was more winning, so after f5, what should white do? So white should take, and I take with the bishop, and you move your queen away. And now after queen g5, how do you defend? Okay, king to h2 seems to save the day. Yeah, but this seems incredibly dangerous with the two bishops and my knight and the queen and everything. Okay, but knight e5 played, still -1, queen e2, and again f5 should have been played, but queen e8. And queen e8 equalizes. Yeah, queen e8 is a weird move. Knight d5, queen g6, attacking the bishop, king h1. Queen h6 is the best move, threatening bishop takes h3. And now bishop d1. So Capablanca could have taken on h3 straight away. Instead c6, gaining control over f4 was also a good move, which I thought was best, just chasing the knight away first. But apparently the engine likes bishop h3 straight away. So takes and bishop h2. And yeah, how does the engine defend this? Ah, it just gives up the queen. And it's only -2? Okay, so the queen gives up the rook, excuse me. Okay, this seems, I mean, so it's an exchange, and how many? And 3 pawns, and it's only -2. Okay. So g6, g6 and white is better. Okay, I thought g6 was weird, I didn't know it was so bad. Okay, now it says it's equal. But still f4 seems to be a very good move. And still bishop h3. Or bishop g4 first. Yeah, okay, so white is better here, because black has to retreat the knight. But I don't think this would be better for white when two humans are playing. Knight f4 played instead. And now g5 chases the knight away, knight d3. Yeah, now after bishop h3, you should play king g1, and after king g1, just knight takes d3. So I was briefly looking at this, sorry for not showing this. I was looking at knight takes d3, and after queen takes d3, just retreats the bishop, and, well, problems here, better development, much better pieces, much safer king, and they thought this should be okay as well. But g takes h3, that was taken, and yeah, no, -7, -12. Yeah, this, we don't have to look at this. So, very precise play, actually. Very nice game. I mean, I enjoyed it very much. This is probably the most enjoyable game in the series so far, not only on Capablanca, but on all 7 world champions. I think it was interesting tactically, and also theoretically. I had a lot of fun going through the transpositions at start. Okay, let me know what you think. Any feedback is appreciated. Leave it in the comments below. And stay tuned for more chess. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.